Welcome to another episode of Dad Up, everyone. Thank you guys very much for joining me. Super excited for the guy that I have on today. He and I have gotten a chance, like all my guests, have gotten a chance to really know each other over the last several months through social media and all that. Now, I wish we could meet in person, but he is clear across the world. As a matter of fact, he is in tomorrow. So he's a day ahead. And I joked with him at the beginning of the episode, asking him what I'm doing tomorrow. So I'm really excited to have James on. James Laughlin, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, it's an absolute pleasure, Bryan. The work that you're doing for the world and the dads and mums out there too, it's amazing.
Thank you very much, my friend. That means a lot. So you're in New Zealand, and for my listeners, people that are watching this, if they don't know who you are, I want to dive right in because I want to get to know who you are and your backstory. You got a fascinating backstory being a champion drummer. I've got to hear more about that. But let's just dive right in, kind of how you grew up and where it's led you, the things you went through, and then where you are today and the things you're doing today.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for letting me share that with your audience. So I started in Northern Ireland, grew up in a very small town in Northern Ireland. And for those of you who don't know much about Northern Ireland, still to this day, there's a lot of division, all based around religion. And so as a kid, I grew up really being aware of what was going on around me, seeing this violence and war essentially going on. And from a young age, I remember sitting on the front step of the house, and it was in a little estate. We weren't from very much money. We were very humble beginnings. I remember seeing these airplanes taking off in the distance from Belfast International Airport. And in my mind, as a 5-year-old, I said, every one of those planes goes to New York, and one day I'm going to be in that plane. I mean, I didn't realize that they was probably going to Glasgow and Dublin and Cork, but they were all going to New York. And whether that was just in me from my DNA of all my Irish ancestors and that moved across during the famine, I don't know. But I had this urge to leave Northern Ireland, and I didn't know how, but I knew I would do it. And I got to about 9 or 10 at school. I had a lot of energy, like my little boy who's 5 now, had a lot of energy, quite effervescent. So I ended up in headmaster's office every now and then. And there's one day he said, "Boy, do you want a detention or do you want some drumsticks?" And I looked at him like he was crazy. I said, "I'll take the drumsticks. That sounds great." He says, "Okay, for the next term, after school on a Tuesday, you're going to meet Mr. Lee and you're going to learn how to play drums." Said, "Cool, sounds better than detention."
Right.
This guy was smart. Like, give the kid a purpose, give him something to focus on, and he'll be in here a lot less for being a troublesome little rascal. So ended up loving the drumming. The guy who was teaching me was very much like a grandfather figure. And I soon realized that this was a competitive activity. This wasn't just in a band having fun. We had that aspect, but actually there was a solo competition, a world solo drumming competition. It's like, cool, I'm into that. So 3 years later, I went on to win the World Solo Drumming Championship. I was unaware that I was even close to being able to win it. Won it the following year, won it again. As a young kid, you're like, what's happening? Then at that point, phone calls came in from Vancouver, Canada, from South Africa, from New Zealand, Australia, saying, "Hey, would you like to come here? And we'll fly you here and you can work with our drummers and help us develop a program." And yeah, that sounds great. So at 17, 18, I headed to Vancouver, Canada, played with the Simon Fraser University pipe band, and went on to win another 5 world titles before the age of 23. During that time traveling, I set up my own education business, a retail business online, then ended up in New Zealand at a private school and worked at a private school there for 14 years, developed a program and helped New Zealand, the underdog drumline that they were, helped them become the world champions, the very first time that any New Zealanders had ever done that. And during that time, we went through a big earthquake here in Christchurch with a lot of devastation. Finn's mom and I went through a miscarriage, and that was personally very challenging. There was a lot of these kind of wake up moments where I was like, oh, what am I doing? Is this what I truly want to be doing? Do I want to teach drums for the rest of my life? And I had a bit of an epiphany. It was at a Tony Robbins event, funnily enough. And I thought, you know what? I want to take all of my skill sets in terms of leading others, leading myself, becoming a world champion, help others become world champions, and take all of that and help coach people who want to impact the world. I want to work with leaders. And in my mind, transforming humanity starts with one leadership conversation at a time. And so I went down the International Coaching Federation route. I went and got fully accredited there, set up my own coaching business. And so now I work with CEOs, professional athletes, around a leaders mastermind. Last year, we brought in our former prime minister, our head of state here in New Zealand. And so for me, that's my big focus, is to try and impact the future through leadership conversations and coaching. And certainly as a dad, and that happened 5.5 years ago, in May 2016, things changed massively. I was very selfish, focused on competition, winning world championships, winning national, 6 nights a week, committed to that, doing 50, 60, 70-hour weeks. That was the norm. As soon as I looked my little boy in the eye, the moment he was born, I said, "I love you, Finn." And he looked back at me, and I thought, I need to make a change right now. And within 6 months, I retired fully from competing. So no more national, no more world championship stuff. People thought I was crazy. Within 2 years, I wrapped up the business. And so no more retail. That was gone. 3 years then, I ended up resigning from the private school and fully focusing on the coaching to make the impact I wanted to make. But more importantly, it meant that I could drop him off to school. I could pick him up after school. I could volunteer to be the class rep at the school. I can be there with my son. I can have ice cream on a Wednesday afternoon and go to the beach at 3 p.m. And so those decisions were all thanks to becoming a father. And it's been the hardest thing I've ever done. And it continues to be the greatest challenge. But by far, it's the most spiritual experience I've ever had.
Wow. Okay. So there's a lot to digest there. There's a lot to kind of go through there, but I want to start with your drumming. And for a young kid to be given that opportunity, clearly the principal, kind of saw it in you, saw something in you, kind of a drive or a passion. I don't know if maybe it was a passion or a drive to be ornery or what, but he saw something in you and you picked up those sticks. How challenging was that, in the sense that here's this new kind of skill set you're trying to learn? As a kid, you had to devote a lot of time to it, and that takes away from time with other things like your friends and all that kind of stuff. Was it an automatic love? Kind of explain that. How did that transition happen? Because I know kids, they don't want to be, unless it's video games, they don't want to be sucked into something that they have to learn. They want to be out goofing off and hanging out. So, that's quite an accomplishment for a young man.
Yeah, thank you. So I started, in about 4 months in it, summer holidays came up. So we had 8 weeks off. And over the summer holidays, I didn't drum. And Mom and Dad were like, "Hey, you're going to be drumming when you go back to school?" "No, I'm not drumming. I'm done. I don't like drumming. No, I'm going back to Taekwondo. I want to do that, physical." And, got back to school, didn't show up to my first drum lesson that night. Headmaster calls the house. My mom's like, "James, Mr. Pollock's on the phone." I'm like, "Oh crap, what have I done? Like, this is bad." He went, "Hey boy," he says, "You want to your drum lesson today?" I said, "Yeah, I don't want to drum anymore." I was like that young where I could just tell him what I was thinking. "I don't want to drum anymore." He says, "Well, that's a pity. Initially, you and I made an agreement that you'd do a term of drumming and no detention, and you've done that. But something else has transpired. Your teacher says you've got a lot of potential. Your teacher said he sees something in you that he hasn't seen in a lot of other people." And I was like, "Really? Wow. Okay, I'll be there next week." I needed him to believe in me. I needed him to help me develop my own belief that I actually had potential at something, that somebody's seen something good in me, rather than this kid who was, annoying teachers and being a little bit rambunctious. He's like, "No, you've got something, and it's valuable, and it's a talent." And so I went back, and I never looked back from that point onwards. And I wanted to be the best person in the little group. There was 4 of us learning. I wanted to be the best person in the group. So I thought, I'll practice 30 minutes a day. I know those guys are only practicing once a week for 5 minutes. I'll do 30 minutes a day. So rose to the top of that little group. Then got into a band where they were much higher standard. I thought, I better do an hour a day. Then I went to the Northern Ireland, or Ulster Solos, it was called. And I thought, my competitors are probably doing 2 or 3 hours a day. Mind you, I'm 11 years old at this stage. So, okay, I'm going to do 4 hours a day. Getting ready for the World Solo Championships. I'd be up at like 6 a.m. as a 12-year-old, practicing for 2 hours before school. I'd get home from school. Sometimes at school, I would actually find somewhere in the music department I could go and practice at lunch. Then get home, I'd do another 3 or 4 hours. It'd be getting close to bedtime, and mom and dad would be like, James, you've got to stop. Like, your siblings have got to sleep. That this is enough. So I remember it was about 2 weeks before the World Solos. My dad is JJ Laughlin, and I am JJ Laughlin. And I was at high school at this point, and you needed a note. If you're going to be sick, you needed a note, and it needed to be signed by your parents to explain why you were absent. So I took, mom and dad went off to work. I was in my school uniform, big blazer. They went off to work. I went off to school, but halfway to school, I walked back to the house, took the blazer off, sat down and drummed for 8 hours all day, just drummed. And then next day I went to school. Sorry, James was late, wrote the note, signed JJ Laughlin. And in my mind, I was being truthful. That was my signature, little white lie. And it caught up with me. But in the end, I won the World Solo Championship 6 months later, or 6 weeks later. And, my mom and dad could see why I was passionate and why I was sacrificing things. On a weekend, Bryan, I'd be sitting on a Saturday drumming 9, 10, 11 hours. On a Sunday, same thing. I've still got calluses here. The hands used to bleed. I used to get carpal tunnel as a kid, RSI, but it was worth it. I had a purpose. I had a vision. I wanted to be the world's best. And I didn't mind not going to parties. I didn't mind, not partying up and drinking and missing out in Taekwondo. I had a purpose, and that's what allowed me to push through the sacrifice.
And, those sacrifices that you made, do you think they taught you how to be the person that you are today, even though you're not drumming? Just kind of the passion and the drive that you have in the coaching, it probably helped you. It probably set you up to be the person that you are today, the successful person that you are today. I know, for me, just kind of the involvement I've had with my kids as they've grown up. I've got a 23-year-old and a 20-year-old. The involvement that I had with them was really a result of my childhood and how I was brought up. And I wanted to be that all-in dad. And that really drove me for that, that the lessons that I learned as a child and as a kid kind of taught me how to be the dad that I want to be, that I am today. So I think for you, the fact that you were so passionate about drumming, and drumming 8, 9, 10, 11 hours a day set you up for the success that you have now, or the drive and passion that you have now. You think that's true?
Yeah, for sure. Undoubtedly.
Yeah.
And, I look back at my experience. My dad is an amazing dad and always was engaged. And my grandfather, who's passed away, was just amazing, so connected, so thoughtful, so warm and welcoming. There was time spent, and they sacrificed a lot to do that as well.
Do you still have a drum set today?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. So actually, I practice on this little bad boy here. It's just a little pad like this, so it's never far.
All right, cool. So you've got a 5-year-old son named Finn.
That's right.
And I got to know. It's my first question. Is he drumming?
He drums. Oh yeah, he comes in and he drums. So I do some group coaching with a large group, and he'll come in and say hello, and he'll drum away. But he's actually very into dancing and singing. So he's got the rhythm, and I'm just going to encourage whatever route he takes. I'm going to encourage it.
Awesome. With that though, the reason I ask that is because with that, what lessons, whether it's through your drumming, the fact that he can come in there and play on the drums that you have, the lessons maybe he's learning there, or even the things that you're doing in the coaching, what lessons are you hoping that he gains from these, that he's watching you, seeing you do these activities or do this business? What lessons are you hoping he's learning from that?
I hope that integrity is a big one. Like when you say you're going to show up, or you say you're going to do something, then you do it. So if that means you're going to show up and coach or teach or perform or whatever it might be, well, you do it. And, I hope that a big lesson he learns is that, delayed gratification is one of the greatest experiences in life, and it brings the greatest reward. And certainly with a musical instrument or a sport, you cannot download an app yet, which programs your subconscious mind to tell your physical body how to do it perfectly. It takes thousands and thousands of hours. Anders Ericsson did that famous study that came out to say, 10,000 hour rule. When you get to the 10,000 hour mark, that's the mark generally where people hit proficiency and mastery and the best athletes. And I want my child Finn to really think about hey, dad takes his time, spent years doing it. Same with his business. He didn't become an overnight success. It grew slowly, but he showed up. He did the work. He was patient and consistent. You know, those lessons are important.
Mm. I would agree. I think that as parents, one of our jobs is to make sure that we're teaching our kids not so much who we want them to be, but just at least giving them that avenue to really grow into what we call a productive human being in society, right? And I think, like my older son, he's graduated from college. He's saving money right now so he can move out on his own, but he's working a phenomenal corporate job in sales that he loves. And he's just a really hard worker. And I think that that's a credit, and, not to kind of pat myself on the back, but I think that's a credit to his mom and I, how we conducted ourselves, not only in as parents, but in the things that we're doing outside the home, showing them what it means to show up, like you said, to show up and put in the work and the effort. And because in the long run, it will be rewarding, it will pay off. And it's just like this, this podcast is, I started it as just kind of a hobby, something that I wanted to kind of give other dads to kind of watch and inspire them to be those dads, the right dads for their kids. And, it's starting to kind of evolve into other things, which is great. That wasn't really the mission. That wasn't really the goal. But the fact that I keep showing up, doing this and interviewing guys like you proves that, hey, when you show up and put in the work, put in the effort, things will start to happen. And I think that that's what both my boys have seen. My younger son goes to college right now. He's a sophomore in college, and he's working on campus, and he plays basketball at college. So he's doing really well himself. I think for your son, the fact that you're showing up every single day, you're right. He's going to see that, and it's just kind of, it's like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? He's going to kind of see that and develop those skills and habits now at 5 years old, where he can kind of take it and run with it. Even when he's 12, 13, 14 years old, it may be drumming, it may be dancing, it may be doing something like that or singing. But whatever it is, the fact that you're there showing him what it means to be successful and the work that you got to put in to be there says a lot. So
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And well done. You should be proud of the boys that you've brought up.
I am, and I talk about it on the show, but they're two of my best friends, and some parents tell me, well, you can't be your kid's best friends. Well, yeah, you can. I'm a true believer in that. I'm a kid's best friends. Now they respect me and I respect them. There are those boundaries that we have, but at the same time, it's cool just to hang out with them and do things with them and just chat with them, even just talk with them. For you've got a young one at home that you're kind of trying to develop into a young man to be, hopefully successful in what he's seen you do. I know you're kind of letting him kind of try different things. What do you hope he does? What kind of things do you hope he gets into?
Interesting. I think a lot about this, and I just really hope that one of the key things he learns to do is he learns how to experience happiness. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying I want, what I want for my kid is happiness. I just don't think that's possible that a kid can be happy 24/7. I want to know that he knows how to experience it and enjoy it and embrace it. I want to know that he knows how to experience sadness and loss and disappointment and move through and get to the other side. I want to know that he can be with other humans and actually enjoy their company and vice versa, that he is a good person to be around. I would love him to be industrious and have a purpose, and that a professional purpose where he is contributing to society and he's being remunerated for that, and he's meeting all of his human needs through that. I'd love him to discover love and experience love with a partner when he's older, and that's it. If he plays sport, great. If he plays music, great. I'm going to drop lots of things in front of him along the way, a bit of swimming, a bit of rugby, a bit of soccer, some other different instruments. I'm going to keep dropping opportunities and try them out and just see what sticks. And whatever sticks, I'll get right behind it and support him. And for me, I want to let him be the master of his own ship.
Yeah, no, that's important. I think it's really important to allow our kids to kind of try things out on their own. Maybe even things that you didn't do as a child. My boys, they gravitated towards basketball and baseball and football. So they gravitated towards sports, but as me as a dad, just kind of letting them try it. The only rule, I did have one rule. If you're going to try something like a sport, if you're going to play on a sport, my only rule was you are not quitting during the season.
Yep.
So if whether you like it or not, if you hate it or like it, and you decide that that's not what you want to do anymore, you got to see it out all the way through to the end of the season. Then at the end of the season, we can have a talk about you trying something else. That happened with my older son. He played baseball from the age of 4 all the way up to 10. And when he got to be 10, I remember this very clearly. We left practice. I was his coach. We left practice. We're driving home. And he said, "Dad, I've got to talk to you about something." He was 10 years old. And I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "I don't want you to be upset." And I go, "What? Yeah, what's wrong?" He said, "I don't want to play baseball anymore." And I went, "Okay, why?" And he said, I don't like it. I don't love it anymore. I used to, I just don't anymore. It's not something I want to do. And at the time he was playing basketball too. He goes, "I just want to focus on basketball." And I said, "Cool. That's great. If that's what you want to do. We have to finish the season." He goes, "No, I know. I understand that. I just don't want to play at the end of the season. I want to be done. I want to just focus on basketball." And I said, "Awesome." He goes, "You're not mad?" And I go, "No, I'm not mad. If this is what you want to do, I want to support you. You're going to do something, whether it's sports or something else. I want you to do something outside of school. But if you just want to focus on basketball, then I'm all in. Chips are in, man. I'm all good."
That's amazing.
Yeah, he was so relieved and so thrilled, and he never picked up a bat again. And I was fine with that. And he thrived at basketball. He was on the varsity team at his high school. And he was a captain. I mean, he thrived at basketball and he loved it. So yeah, I mean, those are good lessons for your kids that, hey, try anything you want, but let's see it through, at least through the season, or at least through this term, whatever it is that they're doing. And then if you want to try something else, that's fine too. Just a little tip for you.
That's brilliant. I'm at the start of the journey. This is great.
Yeah. So cool. Now listen, you're an entrepreneur, you're a coach. You have faced challenges in your life. And something that's important for us to remember as kids is as parents, that our kids, regardless of their age, watch, right? Something that's a common theme on my show about our kids seeing everything that we do and seeing the way that we interact, seeing the way that we react to things. With the challenges of an entrepreneur, there's a lot of challenges thrown your way. How do you handle those with your 5-year-old? I mean, how are you showing him how to handle tough situations?
Yeah, great question. It's been a challenge in a lot of ways, particularly this last 3 or 4 years with, of course, the pandemic, with seeing him grow up as well, going from before the pandemic, that 2-year-old stage into 3, and now, he's on 4 and 5. And during that period, him and my former partner, Lisa, so his mother, we parted ways, and we are great friends and we communicate constantly. And that has probably been the toughest thing to really just model for him. And we're both so intentional with how we do it. We're both very careful and thoughtful around how we talk about each other when we're around each other and when we're not around each other. He gets so much time with both of us. That, I would say, has been the greatest test of mine, and I'm sure Lisa would say the same. The emotional strain, the emotional mastery, the emotional challenge, and demonstrating to him, like, hey, Mom and I are now no longer married. We are great friends. And Mom's really busy at work, and Mom's got her life and she's doing great things. Dad is really busy at building his business and serving his client. But one thing you need to know, we love you. And we're always going to be here for you. And you do come first. But there's going to be times when we need to focus on our business and on our work. And I think that's probably been the greatest challenge for sure, is just traversing separation and figuring that out, plus a pandemic, plus growing businesses and being parents. But there's been certain things I've learned along the years that have really helped. So meditation is a non-negotiable for me.
Awesome.
So I do that as a dad. Like people are like, do you do that to like tap into this crazy world and have all these amazing ideas? I was like, well, sometimes that happens, but actually, no, it reduces my cortisol. So there's less stress. It reduces my heart rate, my blood pressure. It allows me to think more clearly. And I'll tell you what, I meditate every morning, anywhere between 10 minutes to 50 minutes. And I meditate at night with some yoga nidra. That certainly helps me respond more calmly. It certainly helps me focus on what's most important during the day. And so that's one of the greatest things. Movement's another thing, being active, going out for walks, or, yoga and stretching. Being active really helps me to manage the stressful moments. And showing Finn, look, he has his moments. He's 5, right? He blows up and has moments that he's just uncontrollable. And during those moments, it's my mission to remain calm. Cool, calm, collected is what my mission is. Do I do that 100% of the time? No. If this had been 5 years ago, I'd maybe be doing it 5% of the time. Now I'm at like 95% of the time. And that's not to impress anyone. That's to impress upon anybody that's listening that there are certain things you can do in your daily routine that can help you be a better dad. And managing your emotion is so important. Does Finn see me overwhelmed at times? Yeah. But does that manifest itself as dad being loud and aggressive? No. That manifests as dad maybe having a little bit less time to go through a difficult situation and have a conversation. Maybe like, Finn, we got to keep moving, dude. Like we got to move today. That's how it manifests. So he definitely sees me go through different emotions. If someone dies, he sees sad dad. If something amazing happens with him in his life, or with his mom, or with my partner Caroline, we celebrate and he sees elated dad. But there's this constant, when Finn needs me, I'm going to be calm. When Finn's up, I'm going to be calm. When Finn's down, I'm going to be calm. So to do that, it's movement, it's meditation, it's journaling, it's reflection on a weekly basis, and having a mentor. That to me has been one of the most valuable investments.
Yeah, I love that example that you're giving there to your son. Just these different techniques that you do to help you remain calm. I think it's something that parents struggle with. We all have busy lives outside of the home, in the home. We have these busy lives as parents. And one thing that I think that dads struggle with is dads have egos, right? Dads have this thing called the ego. And when they're having when they're frustrated about something, whether it's something their kid did or something that happened at, at their business or their work, whatever it is, they tend to have they carry this weight on their shoulders and when they come home, if their kids are not behaving, they can lose it, right? They can lose it like the kids can. I did as a dad, when my kids were a little younger, I struggled with that. And thankfully for my wife, she was kind of that, that middle ground person. She would tell me, hey, you need to step away, because this is not going in a direction that it needs to go right now. And you need to take a break. I'll handle it. And then the same for her, if she gets frustrated with something, I'll kind of do the same thing for her. But I had to learn as a dad that, look, you're not going to get anywhere meeting their intensity, meeting at the level that they're at. You're not going to get anywhere. It's just going to turn into a worse situation. And I try to encourage dads like you're doing, remain calm. There's no sense in getting upset. Because they're going to meet that just like you're trying to meet that. Once they meet that, then you're going to take it up, and it's just going to be a snowball effect, right? So I think it's important for dads to understand that when your kids mess up, when they make mistakes, because it's going to happen. My kids are older and they still make mistakes. You have to meet them at a level that is manageable, and that's that calmness. Remaining calm will help you resolve a situation faster than it would otherwise if you weren't. So I think that's great. That's an important tool to teach your kid too. And I think that the techniques that you're using are perfect. Obviously the mentorship is huge. I talk about it. I say this a lot, but I talk about it on my show a lot. My wife and I have a marriage coach. And we have this marriage coach, not because we have problems, but so we don't have problems, right? Yep. So we have a coach. She's a licensed therapist, but she's our coach that we meet with every so often to just kind of give her a rundown of how things are going in the relationship. And so a lot of times they're just casual conversations. There are some times where we have to kind of bring up certain things that happened. So we do that because we know that we want to have a healthy relationship between the two of us. Well, the same applies to your kids. You want to have a healthy relationship with your kids. You have to learn to manage the conversations that you have with your kids and how in tune you are with them and the things that they're doing or not doing, and remain at that even even keel, kind of that level medium, and I think that the fact that you're doing the meditation and the mentorship and the fact that you're journaling, I think is all remarkable. So, and I think those are important lessons to teach your kid. I know I'm kind of rambling, but that's kind of the point I was trying to get. Those are all important lessons to teach your kid. And I think he's seeing that.
Well, sometimes, Brian, he'll come in the morning, at 5:30 a.m. and I'll be meditating. He'll just sit up beside me and he'll meditate with me. I'll just sit there in silence. I'm like, this is great. Like, whether he's loving it or doing it, like, he's here and he's experiencing it. So when he needs it in his life, he'll be able to tap into it,
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool that you're doing that. I think journaling is huge too. It's something that I've been a firm believer in. Reading, listening to books, obviously, that is super important. But I think journaling is really important. Journaling for me, I just take a minute or two to kind of journal down my thoughts. I do it on my phone, just to kind of clear my head. Kind of like meditation, I just kind of clear my head so that way I can tackle the day. That's why I do it. I don't do it so much at night, because that's when I just kind of want to just go to sleep. So I don't really do it at night. I have had people tell me I should do it at night too, but I've just been doing it in the morning and it seems to help me throughout the day. So that's awesome. Very cool. I want to kind of shift a little bit talking about Finn. What I know, we talked a little bit about your challenges and stuff that you do face with him right now, especially with his mom, having that kind of trying to navigate through that relationship, which you guys seem to be doing well. But what advice, if you were to talk to another dad right now that was just kind of had a younger kid, maybe a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old, or even a 5-year-old, what advice could you give to dads out there that may be watching this or listening to this about dealing with, your 5-year-old, dealing with a child?
Yeah. No, I think perspective is a beautiful thing. And often when we get in our heads, we struggle to have perspective, and we can make big deals out of really small, minute details. So getting out of your head really often as a dad, I think, is so vital. And there's a process actually that my mentor shared with me some time ago. It's called Dapper. It stands for detach, assess, prioritize, plan, execute, and review. And as a dad, if I'm starting to feel the stress, or, the little guy's kind of pushing some buttons, or there's a behavioral challenge, I'll try and detach, do some breath work, go for a walk, then assess the situation, be like, what's that all about? Oh, there's a big change. He went back to school this week. That's a big change in his little world. Right. Okay, I get it. That's why he's acting up. Okay, what's the priority here? Yeah, well, the priority is to get him comfortably through this, to make sure him and I have a hug at the end, and to talk about how we can manage this differently. And then we wrap a plan around that. Okay, let's have a plan. Okay, we're going to do this. We'll maybe go change the environment. Let's go for a walk with the dog and have the chat when we're walking. And that's the execution part. You're getting the conversation done. And then you review. Did that work? Is his behavior changing? Is he feeling that he's moving through it? So I use that Dapper approach a lot. And there's one thing, actually, it's so interesting. So meditation for me is a non-negotiable, right? And when he was younger, so 1.5, 2, I'd be putting him to bed at night, and he'd be kicking up a fuss, not wanting to go to bed. And I would get really, not angry, but I get really frustrated. Like, this is my meditation time. Like, dude, you're supposed to be asleep. I'm not telling him this, but he's probably feeling it with my body language. Like, oh, I'm so annoyed. I'm not going to get to meditate now. It's like way past that. I've got to go and plan tomorrow. And I talked to one of my coaches, and he's like, James, that is your meditation. I said, what are you talking about? He said, you want to meditate? I was like, yeah. He said, well, meditation is simply focusing on one thing and being absolutely fully present, whether it's your breath, whether it's a mantra, or whether it's being with another person. He's like, if your kid is kicking up a fuss and not wanting to sleep, be present with that, be focused on only that, breathe through it, and that is your meditation done for the day. Meditation's not always closed eye and Zen. And that shifted so much for me, Brian. So Sometimes when we think, oh, I need to get let's take exercise. Oh, I need to get my workout in, but my kid's not letting me. They won't let me give me 5 minutes. Cool. How can I do a workout with the little dude or the little woman, right? How can we do some squats and burpees and runs and jumps and actually still get your workout in? How can we do our meditation? If it's reading, hey, if you're maybe except for David Goggins' book, because it might be a few choice words, if you're reading a self-help book, read it out loud and let them think that that's their book. And, it's amazing what kids will allow. They'll roll with it. And, certainly with meditation, it's taken a while, but now he understands it's an important part of dad's day. But there was a point where he didn't. And so I think just adjusting our expectations of our surroundings as dads, it's really important.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very cool. I think that's awesome. I mean, the reason I say that is because for me, I've talked to dads, especially this was going back 2 years now, almost 2 years, the heat of the pandemic, we're 6 months into the pandemic, and I had dads asking me, I know my son or daughter can't go outside because of this pandemic. I know they can't interact with their friends because of this pandemic, but I can't get them to focus on real activity. All they want to do is play video games. And I can't get them off the video games. It just seems like that's all they're doing. Sitting in their room, they go to online school, and then they're playing video games all night. And I said, okay, so? And they go, yeah, I don't want my kid playing video games. I don't want them being sucked into that activity. Well, here's a thought. Your kids are in a rough situation, going through something that they've never experienced. You're going through something that you've never experienced. And instead of harping on your kids about the fact that they're playing too much video games during this pandemic, why not play with them? And the reason that you do that is, first of all, you'll make sure that they're not doing anything they shouldn't be doing when they're on these headsets and stuff like that, talking to whoever it is they're talking to. But you'll make sure that they're playing decent games. They're not talking to somebody they shouldn't be. And number two, it's a time for you guys to bond as a child and a parent. It's allowing you to create that bond, start a conversation with them, act like most parents don't know how to play video games, right? Certain video games that these kids play. Act dumb. Don't ask them to teach you how to play a video game. Ask them to teach you the game that they're playing. They'll love it. They will love teaching you how to play the game. They will love destroying you in the game as they're teaching you, right? So enjoy it. Don't take that away from them. Enjoy it, because you both are going through something you've never been through. So the fact that you're kind of showing your son the things that you're doing, but he's understanding that this is an important part of your day. But the fact that you're kind of understanding that and building that bond with him is huge. You have no idea the rewards that you will have just from doing that. Like your coach told you, or that guy that you were talking to, like he told you, you have no idea the reward that you will have until he's older. And you'll realize how strong your bond is now with him. And it could be because of those little activities that you did with him. And like you said, maybe it is reading one of your, self-help books, right? But the fact that he was into it or listening to you reading him a book that was really for you, but now you guys are both bonding and the reward comes later, it's awesome. Trust me.
Delayed gratification, right?
Exactly. So I tried to tell these dads, I had a couple dads that reached out to me and talked to me about it. And this is what I told them. I'm like, dude, play the game. Who cares?
I love that.
So that's cool. I'm glad that you're doing that. Very cool. I want to do this though. I know we're running short on time, but I want to kind of give you an opportunity. I know for my listeners who want to look you up, learn a little bit more about you, best place for them to do that, and then the things you got going on right now that you're super excited about.
Yeah, thank you. So the best place for people to connect with me would be on Instagram, James Laughlin Official, and Laughlin spelled Laugh, Laughlin. They can also go check out the website, jjlaughlin.com, to see what I'm all about. And if they want to just get lots of free content and engage, then the podcast on Apple or Spotify is Lead on Purpose with James Laughlin. I interview world leaders, prime ministers, presidents, top athletes, CEOs, and all around leadership.
Yeah, that's awesome. You guys, he has a phenomenal podcast, and he puts out a lot of great content on it. And the coaching stuff is top notch as well. So make sure you guys are checking out his podcast. But listen, James, I'm super excited that you and I have gotten a chance to know each other over the last several months. I'm looking forward to continuing our friendship. And one of these days, you and I are going to be in the same area together, and we're going to have to grab a meal or something. But
That sounds great.
one of these days it'll happen, man. I promise.
Let's meet halfway. Let's meet in like Oahu or something like that. That'd be great.
There you go. There you go. Well, look, man, it's been a super pleasure having you on. I really appreciate it, and look forward to staying in contact with you, my friend.
Thanks, Bryan, and keep that upping. It's amazing.
Thank you very much. Thank you guys, everybody, for joining me and James on another episode of Dad Up. Make sure you guys are checking out his podcast, his Instagram, looking at all the things that he's doing. And if you're interested in some sort of coaching from James, make sure you reach out to him. Say hello. Let him know that you heard him on the podcast and want to know more about what he's doing. And while you're at it, make sure you guys are subscribing not only to his podcast, but to mine as well. You can check out my YouTube. Obviously, you're watching this, you're checking out my YouTube. Make sure you guys subscribe. Let us know what you think of the episode. And I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode of Dad Up. Thanks for listening to another episode of Dad Up. Make sure you guys subscribe to my podcast and my YouTube channel. And do me a favor, leave me a rating and a review. Would love to hear from you to see what you think of the show. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes coming up each and every week. Thank you for listening. This is Dad Up.